CoSy friends, welcome back to Opus Eleni, where we have embraced comfort. As I'm sure you can't help but be aware, CoSy 2021 is less than a month away, and one of my fellow costumers, Gracie Patton, is going to be running a social media event around the idea of Cozy Sunday. Basically, you're meant to post a picture of your preferred loungewear, whether that's Sunday undies, comfy cosplay, or historical pajamas on Instagram, and use the hashtag CozySunday2021. To that end, she just recently released a video of her making a banyan, which is intensely topical. Banyans were a garment that was worn by both men and women in the 18th century as a dressing gown or sort of a casual coat over undergarments in the mornings and evenings, or while relaxing at home. Sometimes they were worn with a turban or other exotic cap instead of a wig. Men, especially in the colonies, would wear them as a very informal streetwear as well. Which brings us directly to today's helping of no costuming without context. Now, I am by no means an expert on 18th century fashion or history, and I really encourage you to go check out Gracie's video, which is amazing and goes into this whole thing in a lot more detail. And I will link that in the cards and the description. But as I understand it, the banyan was a garment that's rooted very deeply in colonialism and white supremacy. The general shape shows appropriated influences from Japan, India, Persia, and Turkey, depending on the style, as were the turbans and caps they were worn with. Many of these styles came to England through the East India Company, an organization chartered to further English dominion through monopolizing international trade, drug and slave trafficking, and colonialist exploration and exploitation. So already we have a very problematic garment. And that's even before we get into the fact that the cotton grown and processed for banyans mostly came from either the Indian subcontinent or America. So we're either looking at colonialized, exploited labor or literal chattel slavery. This is an incredibly shallow overview of the forces that shape this particular garment, but I still think that it's important to have at least some familiarity with the context of the clothing that we choose to make, whether we're using them as an educational tool or not. My own reasons for wanting to make a banyan are more practical than educational or aesthetic. Well, maybe a little aesthetic. I don't actually own a bathrobe of any kind, and I have found myself wanting something I can throw on over my night clothes, usually a tank top or a linen shift if I'm feeling especially fancy, in the morning or before bed. I also knew I didn't want something fastened only with a tied belt at the waist like modern bathrobes. They never stay on me, and I hate having to continually fuss with them. So instead, I'm planning to have this banyan fastened with 2 buttons in the front. So my plan is to use a very simple pattern, much like the artistic reform dress I made, with the sleeves cut en chemise or in one piece with the body. Both V from Snappy Dragon and Kate from Willoughby and Rose have made banyans cut on these same lines, and I will link those videos in the description. For fabric, I'm using an old queen-size IKEA duvet cover in my favorite gray on white pattern, which is actually a pattern from the 1700s, and 2 matching gray king-size pillowcases. So everyone go grab your cuppa. Today I am drinking Altair, which is a new release from Tabletop Teas. It's a lovely blend of hibiscus, Persian lime, and rose that tastes amazing iced. Let's get into it. Here is a quick project overview. You can see my vague cutting diagram there with the duvet cover folded in quarters so I can draw and cut the general shape of the banyan out all at once. I actually bought this duvet cover by accident. I have a queen-size bed and I bought the queen-size duvet cover for it because that makes sense. But I foolishly underestimated how much I love to be swimming in my blankets and ended up going back for the king-size one a couple weeks later. I kept the queen, figuring that I would make something pretty out of it because I love the design so much. And here we are. I've measured out the width of my sleeve, which is about 10 inches plus seam allowance, and the sleeve length, which is about 24 inches. Because this is a very loose garment, nothing about measuring or cutting has to be super precise. Once the length is measured, I am 60 inches from my shoulder to the floor, and that will give me enough length to neaten the hem at the end of the process. I can swing the side seam out at an angle whose end will be the intersection of hem length and sleeve length. On a piece of 60-inch wide fabric, I would just make the hem circumference as wide as possible for maximum swish. After I have all of those layers cut out, and I recommend a nice sharp pair of scissors for that, I will measure the general width and length of the V-neck. Then I'll open the front of the banyan by cutting down the outermost fold. Time for a quick try on to make sure the proportions are broadly correct, and then I can draw out some pockets. I've measured where the pockets should be inserted, and then I can pin, sew, and serge each individual pocket half to the side seam of the banyan. Then I will sew and serge each side seam, starting at the sleeve opening, around the armpit curve, around the edges of the pockets, and down to the hem. I'm choosing to finish these interior seams by serging because I want this to be a quick project, but still look properly finished since there is no lining. I couldn't find any gray fabric that matched well enough for the facing, so I ended up running back out to my local IKEA and grabbing a couple of pillowcases that I knew would match. I'm cutting them up into 3-inch wide strips that I'll use to face the sleeve openings and around the whole edge of the banyan. I'm making the facing by sewing the strips to the inside of the banyan with a 1/2-inch seam allowance, then turning that to the outside and ironing it down, then ironing the raw edge under by 1/2 inch and top stitching that folded edge down. Once the easy parts are finished, it's time to tackle the curved edges. For the back of the neckline, I'll trace that curve onto the gray material and measure 3 inches out from that line. I'll sew that to each of the front facings at the shoulder seam and treat it like any other curved facing from there. time to tidy up the hem before facing that part. I wanted the front to overlap and button, and it's certainly big enough to do so, but that means that the hem curves are a bit wonky. So with the help of my very attentive production assistant, I laid the banyan out on the floor, the cutting table still not quite big enough for hem trimming, and marked and cut where the hem curves should go to be neat and tidy. Stick around for this brief commercial break for the rest of the construction and the reveal. I faced the hem in the same way that I did the fronts, taking tiny little tucks in the top edge of the facing so that it curves nicely instead of wrinkling. It's a gentle enough curve that this technique worked well and the tucks aren't noticeable at all when worn. Now I will mark the button placement. I wanted 2 buttons in a double-breasted sort of situation, so I just needed to mark where each button and buttonhole should go while wearing the banyan. Since this is unlined, I wanted to make sure that the areas on a single layer of fabric had some reinforcement for strength. I cut a square of fabric twice as big as the patch that I wanted and folded the corners into the center and ironed it down. So then I had a double layer patch with no raw edges showing that I sewed to the correct places on the inside of the banyan. Then all there was to do were the buttonholes, which I did on my machine because I wanted a quick project, if you recall, and sewing on the buttons, which I absolutely forgot to film. think the funniest part of having a dressing gown that matches my bed covers is the potential for camouflage. Allow, if you will, a brief hypothetical dramatization. Mom! Yes? Mom! Yes? Mom! Yes? Mom? What? I didn't see you there. Here we are, safely at the end of yet another project. Let me tell you, I think this is the most comfortable thing I've ever made in my life. I did end up making a waist tie out of some of the leftover gray strips, but I don't really use it. I find that just the buttons are perfect at keeping everything secure. In upcoming news, Costume Symposium is only 1 month away on the weekend of August 9th through 22nd. For more information and updates, you can follow CoSy on Instagram and Facebook, the links to both of which will be in the description box below, as usual. The second tournament of defense is coming up in November, and that info will also be linked below, and I will get into that a little bit more as we get closer. We are also swiftly approaching 5,000 subscribers, which is so exciting. I know I teased a giveaway a little while ago, and I thought I would drop another hint. You may remember that fantastic anatomical heart damask I made my 1780 stays out of. Well, I still have some of it left, and our 5K giveaway item will be made from those scraps. You're more than welcome to guess in the comments what I will be making, but I will announce it officially once we hit 4,725 subscribers. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I upload every other Friday, and if you like getting some notifications from YouTube, sometimes, but not always, you can click the little bell. If you'd like to find me on other social media, I am at OpusLNI everywhere. And all of those links will be down in the description box below, along with a link to my Ko-fi, which has exclusive content for donors, and my web shop, where I have veil pins, perfume oils, and linen sprays if you would like to help support the channel more directly. Until next time, be kind, do the work, continue supporting marginalized people, and keep creating. Hwyl!